The injustice arrives quietly, often dressed as efficiency or good intentions. It is the steady, almost imperceptible erosion of your voice, the subtle dismissal of your expertise, and the insidious assumption that because you have accumulated more years, you must inherently see less clearly. This institutional bias operates not through overt aggression, but through procedural delays, patronizing language, and the creation of systems designed to favor speed over seasoned wisdom. It is the constant low-level noise of dismissal that eventually wears down the will to fight. We are culturally conditioned to believe that confronting injustice requires a shout. We feel compelled to match the volume, the rising frustration, and the frantic, disorganized energy of the opposition. This is the common, critical mistake. Engaging in a shouting match yields nothing but profound fatigue, the loss of strategic focus, and critically, it provides the perfect excuse for those in power to label you emotional, obstructive, or unreasonable. When you lose your composure, you cede control over the narrative and provide your adversary with the moral high ground they desperately seek. The moment you react, you're no longer the professional, you become the problem. But the most profound, irreversible outcome flips on a small, deliberate gesture, a disciplined countermove against chaos. It can manifest as a centered, deliberate breath, taken just before you choose your words. It can be the quiet, controlled slide of a perfectly organized evidence packet across a polished mahogany table. Most potently, it can be 3 precise words that instantly freeze institutional abuse and force accountability. Show me the policy. Better, infinitely better, than shouting, than raging, than reacting. Locating, citing, and applying the specific rule that ends the argument before it escalates into conflict. Leverage is found in the certainty of documentation, not the passion of rhetoric. I have personally witnessed entire rooms filled with powerful, dismissive individuals go silent when true dignity walks in, a dignity armed not with raw, undirected anger, but with irrefutable, contextualized proof. I have seen multi-million-dollar contracts summarily cancelled, executive managers instantly replaced, and formal public apologies reluctantly issued, all because one individual made the conscious decision to prioritize unwavering clarity and procedural exactitude over the satisfying, but ultimately fruitless, rush of emotional conflict. Here is the strategic truth you must internalize. The most effective justice tool doesn't scream, it documents. It quantifies the violation. It cites the statute. It is relentless, neutral, and impervious to emotion. Wortschrift. In 24 hours, accountability in the event hall. Consider the meticulous case of Elias Vance. Elias was a distinguished specialist in regulatory compliance, particularly focused on complex, large-scale infrastructural projects. He was famously deliberate. He never rushed a review, and he eschewed technical jargon whenever simple, precise language would suffice. His pace was slow, reflective, and non-negotiable, stemming from a profound understanding that every single regulatory rule, every timeline, every setback, every mandate, had been painstakingly written in the aftermath of someone else's catastrophic failure, bankruptcy, or, in some cases, the tragic loss of human life. He respected history because he understood the cost of non-compliance. He was contracted by Novacorp, a massive, aggressively expanding development firm, to consult on a crucial, high-visibility city bid. The project manager assigned to the bid, Anya Karas, was undeniably fast, intellectually brilliant, and utterly impatient with any consideration of history or legacy requirements. Her mantra was, "The result is needed now." Elias tried to warn her repeatedly about the binding constraints of Section 4.1c of the City Charter. This specific section governed the environmental review timeline, mandating a 60-day independent third-party review, a period that was explicitly non-negotiable, designed to prevent political maneuvering. Anya habitually ignored his counsel, publicly labeling his concerns as legacy thinking and prioritizing the bid submission deadline over exhaustive due diligence. She systematically cut him off in internal strategy meetings, subtly steering conversations away from regulatory barriers and towards his supposed professional inadequacy, suggesting he was simply overwhelmed by today's competitive metrics. The ageist implication was clear. The system had moved on, and he hadn't. Despite Elias's written warnings, Anya pushed the internal timeline, guaranteeing the board of directors a final delivery date that was mathematically impossible to meet, while adhering to 4.1c. She took a calculated risk, betting that the city board would waive the requirement if faced with the firm's political pressure and momentum. The public hearing arrived. This was the highly formal event hall, a venue designed to project authority, with soaring ceilings, a massive, polished mahogany table, and microphones positioned for maximum broadcast clarity. The atmosphere was charged, tight, and hyper-expectant. Elias sat relegated to the very end of the Novacorp delegation table, his posture immaculately straight, his notebook open to a specific, pre-marked page. His official title for the meeting had been reduced to Historical Advisor, a soft, patronizing title designed precisely to minimize and dismiss the true weight of his expertise. The critical moment arrived when the board chair, known for his stern demeanor and absolute adherence to protocol, asked the central question regarding the environmental review timeline. Anya, outwardly smooth and radiating confidence, delivered the fictional, accelerated date she had promised the board. The chair paused, looked down at his own regulatory notes, and then shifted his precise gaze directly toward Elias. "Mr. Vance, I see your name formally attached to the foundational regulatory review documentation. Given your tenure, do you personally concur with this accelerated timeline proposed by Ms. Karras?" Anya cut in instantly, her tone a sharp blend of professional respect and immediate dismissal. "Mr. Vance simply reviewed our historical documentation for context, Chair. His input is purely advisory in nature. We, as the modern team, are absolutely confident in the date we have provided." This was the moment of maximum exposure for Elias. He felt the intense, internal impulse to sigh, to react with visible frustration, or to launch into a defensive, self-justifying correction of Anya, actions that would instantly label him insubordinate and emotional. But he had performed his ritual. He had grounded himself in the physical, anchoring his strategic commitment. Less panic, more proof, resulting in greater power. He took a slow, deep breath, planting his weight firmly. He adjusted the microphone only slightly, ensuring it was aligned perfectly. His voice, when it finally arrived, was remarkably low, steady, measured, and entirely audible throughout the cavernous hall, a frequency that cut through the tension. "Chair," Elias said, deliberately meeting the chair's eyes and entirely bypassing Anya's gaze, treating her as structurally irrelevant to the conversation. "I do not concur with the proposed timeline, and, for the record, I provided the Novacorp team, and specifically Ms. Karras, with 3 separate, specific, and internally documented warnings regarding the binding, non-discretionary nature of City Charter Section 4.1c. He paused, letting the profound silence settle into the vast, microphone-laden hall. This controlled silence was itself evidence, a strategic assertion of gravitas. Anya leaned forward, a sharp, practiced, and deeply patronizing smile fixed on her face, attempting to reclaim control. "Elias, we have thoroughly discussed this internally. You are simply confusing the optional guidance memoranda that predate 2010 with the mandatory statute currently in effect." This was the core lie, the strategic ageist maneuver. It diminished his expertise by suggesting profound confusion and leveraged institutional seniority, Anya's position, to dismiss earned wisdom, Elias's decades of experience. Elias did not engage the personal insult or the lie. He engaged the objective truth. He lifted a single, perfectly laminated card from the prepared front pocket of his notebook, positioning it briefly so the hall's harsh overhead lighting caught the gloss. On the card, Printed in stark 14-point type was the binding text: City Charter, Section 4.1c, mandated 60-day independent environmental review. Penalty for violation: immediate and permanent revocation of all current and pending permitting authority. He did not waste time reading the policy in its entirety. He offered only the core, definitive quote, the sentence that operates as a table stopper in high-stakes negotiations. The statute states unequivocally, any intentional or negligent attempt to circumvent this defined timeline shall be construed as a material violation of the public trust, resulting in mandatory contractual and regulatory termination. Then came the second quiet gesture, a move of ultimate authority. He slid a sealed, heavy, thick envelope, clearly marked and officially addressed, across the polished table, directly toward the board chair. The path of the envelope was visible to everyone. Chair, within that envelope. Elias continued, his voice absolutely flat, absolutely neutral, betraying no satisfaction or anger. You will find a certified copy of my consulting contract with Novacorp, signed by the Chief Executive Officer himself. You will also find a clean copy of the original 4.1c charter. I respectfully ask that you note the author of that underlying governance policy. He paused again, a long, measured breath. The hall was now monumentally silent, the silence amplified by the microphones. Every single member of the board was fixated on the envelope. Anya's sharp, condescending smile had been instantly wiped clean, replaced by the rigid expression of dawning panic. This was the moment the contract spoke, defining the reality that ego had ignored. The chair slowly and deliberately opened the envelope, scanning the documents under the bright lights. He looked first at Elias, then back at the detailed, multi-page contract, then at the charter. He understood the implications instantly. The shock was palpable as the revelation rippled through the board. Elias was not merely an historical advisor. His authority was far deeper than they imagined. He hadn't just studied the policy over 30 years. He had actually conceptualized and drafted the fundamental governing framework for this entire branch of urban infrastructure 3 decades prior. Furthermore, his consulting contract included a specialized, non-negotiable clause, a clause insisted upon and inserted by Novacorp's CEO, who understood Elias's value, stipulating that if Elias's detailed written warnings regarding regulatory compliance were ignored and subsequently led to public controversy or regulatory sanction, his consulting fees would automatically triple, and, most critically, Novacorp would bear all resulting civil and criminal liability, including massive, specific financial penalties. Elias had been hired not for cheap advice, but for the inherent, recognized insurance policy his documented authority provided. Anya had recklessly disabled the most powerful protection the company held. "Ms. Anya," the chair stated, his voice dropping to a dangerously low, final register. Mr. Vance's warning regarding the 60-day mandatory timeline is explicitly dated 2 weeks prior to this meeting, and it references 4.1.c by its full codified number. Can you explain, using regulatory terminology, why this detailed counsel was summarily superseded by your aggressive deadline? Anya was structurally trapped. Her aggressive dismissiveness and institutional bias were instantaneously exposed by the proof that meticulously documented the termination of her every excuse. Her ego had dictated that the older man's experience was disposable. Her bias was about to cost the company the bid, and much more. Elias offered no moment of gloating. He looked straight past Anya, directly addressing the entire deliberative body. I fully respect the necessity of operational speed. I respect today's demanding metrics. But policy beats ego. Always. The law has no timeline for emotional justification. The outcome was definitive and immediate. The board adjourned the public meeting within minutes for an internal emergency review. Within a verifiable 24-hour period, the NovaCorp CEO had issued a formal public apology to the city for the procedural misstep. Anya Karas was instantly removed from the project. Her contract with the firm terminated due to gross negligence regarding compliance. Elias's contract was not only honored, but immediately expanded in scope and duration. The structural shift was complete. Competence was resoundingly affirmed. Professional dignity was publicly restored, and undeniable accountability was swiftly achieved through documentation. Justice prep, the 10-minute ritual of leverage. You must develop and practice a consistent, repeatable routine for confronting ageism, persistent disrespect, or the immediate threat of elder or professional abuse, whether that conflict occurs across a familial dinner table or a high-pressure boardroom. This ritual takes precisely 10 minutes and works to instantaneously center you in professional competence, not reactive emotion. It moves your internal posture immediately from that of a potential victim to that of a proactive documentarian. 1. Centered breathing and posture. 3 minutes. Assume a position of authority. Sit completely tall. Plant both feet firmly and equally on the floor, feeling the connection. Drop your shoulders away from your ears, releasing neck tension. Initiate 5 deep, diaphragmatic breaths. Inhale slowly for 4 counts. Hold the breath for 4 counts, and execute a slow, full exhale for 6 counts. This physiological discipline activates the vagus nerve, reducing cortisol production and lowering the high-pitched internal hum of anxiety. Maintain strong, non-slouching posture. Ensure your voice remains low and measured, and keep your eye contact steady. These combined physical cues externally communicate non-negotiable authority and internal control. 2. Policy and proof prep. 3 minutes. Before entering the confrontation, you must open a dedicated digital note, an encrypted file, or a physical tabbed folder containing your ultimate leverage. This specific leverage point might be a time-stamped screenshot of a critical house. Rule: an exact clause number in a company handbook, the specific routing number of a bank regulation, a safety code, or, like Elias, a binding section of a contract. You need the specific governing language that applies to the situation. If a written policy is unavailable, you must identify and note the exact name, title, and committee responsible for the implementation or enforcement of the decision being challenged. Always cite the highest possible authority. For medical disputes, know the state's Patient Bill of Rights number. For financial issues, know the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Code. 3. The neutral procedural demand. 2 minutes. Practice 1, and only one, neutral phrase. Do not, under any circumstances, rehearse the argument you wish to win. Rehearse the procedural demand that forces the other party to reveal their foundation. This phrase is your unbreakable shield, forcing transparency. Example 1. Familial financial control. I require immediate visual confirmation of the signed agreement, please, along with the notary stamp. Example 2. Institutional workplace dismissal. I would like the full name and title of the person in charge of this decision, and a full copy of the policy guiding the specific outcome. Example 3. Public or online harassment boundary setting. I need your full name, badge number, and the direct contact information for your internal oversight department. Example 4. Medical care dispute. Please provide me with the specific statutory code that mandates this restriction on my care. Repeat this phrase out loud in a low, measured voice until it sounds robotic and neutral. Avoid any upward inflection that signals a question or uncertainty. Deliver it as an undeniable, clear statement of fact. 4. Activate documentation. 2 minutes. Ensure your documentation tools are fully ready and accessible. For digital encounters, virtual meetings, phone calls, Know the exact shortcut or button sequence to start video or audio recording immediately, ensuring you comply with local one-party or two-party consent laws, or state this compliance clearly. This conversation is being recorded for accuracy. Note the precise time, date, and location of the incident, along with the names of all present parties. If you have a designated ally, text them beforehand. Need you ready to hit record and witness this interaction at 3:00 p.m. Allies are non-negotiable. They fundamentally alter the power dynamic, providing the necessary neutral, third-party witness required for formal evidence submission. They are your second set of documented eyes. The cumulative benefit of performing this rigorous ritual is safety, absolute clarity, and maximum leverage. You are successfully converting the raw, paralyzing energy of fear and frustration into actionable, verifiable data. You are professionally, deliberately, and strategically creating evidence. Big assets, bigger dignity, unyielding documentation. This profound power shift is available to absolutely anyone facing systematic dismissal, whether your asset under siege is a 7-figure investment portfolio, the clear title to your home, or 30 years of irreplaceable professional knowledge that an institution seeks to discard. When the financial or personal stakes are astronomically high, the entirety of your savings, a complex inheritance, or your hard-won professional reputation, the need for calm, procedural preparation is not merely helpful. It is paramount to self-preservation. We carry a dangerous, false assumption that because we are older, we are inherently safer or respected. We assume that because we personally built the asset or the system, our ultimate authority over it is unquestioned. Ageism and institutional overreach systematically exploit this profound assumption, hoping that you will be too weary, too confused, or too emotionally hurt to execute an effective, documented defense. The individual or institution that feels they possess the self-granted right to dictate your life, the overly confident new manager, the entitled relative attempting a power grab, the condescending administrator blocking access, relies almost entirely on eliciting a strong, destabilizing emotional response from you to justify and fuel their assertion of control. Do not, under any circumstances, give them that easy justification. Give them the policy number instead. They claimed Elias was insignificant, merely an old consultant past his prime. They wrongly assumed he was not in charge, but he simply showed the original contract, the clause, and the binding regulatory text. The outcome was a forced correction of reality. Remember this unwavering truth. Your dignity is not subject to negotiation or opinion. Your verifiable competence is defined by your documented results and your knowledge of procedural rules, not by their arrogant estimation of your age. Your comprehensive policy knowledge is a clear, unbreachable boundary line you draw against entitlement and institutional abuse. Respect your limits. Avoid physical confrontation at all costs. Physical safety always supersedes procedural justice. If there is an immediate, verifiable physical or financial risk, prioritize safety, retreat, and seek immediate help from trained legal or protective services. Laws governing contracts, property rights, and workplace discrimination vary widely. You must adapt your preparation and proactively research your specific local rights and remedies. The disciplined journey toward justice and restored control begins with unyielding clarity and preemptive documentation. The challenge and call to action. Today, commit to choosing and executing one action that specifically prepares you for the next inevitable attempt to diminish your expertise or steal your autonomy. 1. Find the rule, the citation. Identify and precisely locate one fundamental governing document that protects a key personal or financial asset, your lease agreement, your bank's specific transfer policy, your company's anti-discrimination policy number, or a healthcare directive. Save the full policy number or section in a dedicated, secure note on your phone, marked Leverage. 2. Practice the phrase, the shield. Practice one of the neutral policy phrases from the ritual in front of a mirror or into a voice recorder until its delivery sounds entirely neutral, authoritative, and non-reactive. 3. Identify the ally, the witness. Choose one single trusted person, a friend, professional attorney, accountant, or peer, and formalize an agreement with them to be your designated procedural witness. Ensure they understand the documentation protocol. Commit absolutely to initiating the 10-minute justice prep ritual before engaging in any high-stakes conversation, meeting, or confrontation. This quiet, documented courage is the most potent, irreversible weapon against institutional ageism. Tell me, what policy or rule are you saving today? What is the specific scenario you are actively preparing for next? Let us build this clarity, detail by detail, together.